It doesn't feel warm, it just feels humid. Okay. Hello, Kirsten.
Hi, Kirsten.
Yeah, she walked in with She said it was going to feel different being out there.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Milan Area School Board of Education regular meeting for Wednesday, July 20th for 2022. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening here or online. One reminder, if you do want your attendance noted for the meeting, please make sure to sign in on the sheet at the entrance so that your attendance can be noted in the minutes. All board members are present except for Ms. Rosen Leacher. She is excused for this evening. And other than that, I don't have any other updates. So in support of our strategic plan for communications to develop a comprehensive plan to foster student, family, staff, and community engagement and partnerships, this is the time that we have public comments. A reminder, this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not to be considered a public meeting. There are 2 times for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. When addressing the board, you will be asked to state your name. The board determines the amount of time granted to individuals or groups to speak. Each person shall be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. Board members may question speakers but are not obligated to answer questions or make statements or commitments in response to issues raised by the public. In general, such items will be referred to the superintendent for advisement, investigation, study, and/or recommendation, or designated as future agenda items for board consideration. I will give you a 30-second warning, and then I ask you to finish your thought when the timer goes off. Is there anyone that would like to address the board?
Greetings to the board chair, the superintendent, and my fellow citizens who are here tonight. My name is Lafeast Gallimore, and I'm here to share with you an innovative program, at least I think it's an innovative program that we are trying to put together for our young people in Washington County. It's called the Washington Educational Metrics Institute. And what it's designed to do is to help many of our kids who don't get their early preparation to prepare for post-secondary education. For example, we met with the Ypsi School Board last week, and we made a presentation to them about some of the kids who probably will need this, but they don't get that exposure early on to start preparing for post-secondary education. So by the time they're in the 11th or 12th grade, they're already behind schedule in terms of being competitive with some of their peers. And so I would like to share with you that the program is divided into 3 components. One is an online test-taking practices, and the way that's set up is that we will eventually have computers where we will have a demonstrated SAT, ACT test where the kids could actually come in and practice starting at a very low grade. So by the time they get ready to take those tests, in reality, they are familiar with those tests. They may feel comfortable with those tests. They may feel confidence in taking those tests. So they may understand the strategies that will at least improve their test scores beyond what they are now. So that's one component. The other component is called My College Process. These are a series of educational modules that we put together that are designed to help parents and the students understand how to navigate their post-secondary education process. And I'm sure most of you probably been through that, and it's a very complex process if you don't have a support system to guide you through it and to give you information and to help you understand how to fill out those FAFSA forms, you know, how to research colleges, how to look for scholarships. And believe it or not, last year, the year 2021, there was something like $3.7 billion that was Pell Grants that was returned to the government because they were not used, because kids just, and I don't know whether it was because of COVID and whether, you know, kids were preparing for post-secondary education, but that money was unspent. So we have an opportunity to provide students with some prior preparation in terms of how to navigate that whole process. The third part is, what was the third part, Bill? Yeah, and you know, and that's essentially what the program really is about, is that we're just trying to help kids from what we call underserved communities and the parents understand how to traverse that whole system. The third component that I drew a blank on is what we call a community-based counseling program. Michigan ranks at the bottom of the barrel when it comes down to student to counselor ratio, okay? And that was exposed by the Oxford incident that happened some months ago. And what we're saying is that there are people probably in the community that can be trained to be community-based counselors. They can be assigned to a student and a family and guide that family and their student through that process for a whole year and be there as a support system for those students. And we plan to offer a training program for those community-based counselors. We plan to, of course, we have to do an eye-check background on every volunteer that comes into the program. And we're also looking at trying to we're working with U of M, Community Outreach Education Program. And we have two churches in Ypsilanti that have agreed to work with us as well on this. Second Baptist agreed to host the computer section of the program. Brown Chapel agreed to hold the educational modules. That's where the students will meet on a regular basis. So we do have some support. Plus, we've been working with Michigan out of Lansing. We received the Innovator Grant from them to get started. So we're making some progress, and we're beginning to form a board of directors that will help guide this whole initiative over the years. And we're not looking at this as being a short-term initiative. You know, from the very beginning, Bill and I and some of the others we talked about this being a sustainable program, sustainable in the sense that hopefully within 30 years from now, which I hope to be around by that time, but, you know, making it a sustainable effort. And that's the thing that we're doing now as we begin to build the foundation of this program, is that we're looking at this as a long-term initiative, not just a stopgap initiative.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
I have some documents here that I don't think I brought enough, but I don't know what to leave in.
That's exactly what I was hoping, that you had some you can hand to Superintendent Gearbaugh.
Yes.
And then if you could email Mr. Gearbaugh, his email address is on our website.
Okay.
Just so that he's got your information, unless it's on what you have.
I had to print it on here, so.
Okay.
But anyway, this is a copy of the rollout that we did.
Awesome.
In
We'll
May
take
and
it.
June.
I'm sorry, your time has expired.
Okay,
So,
all right, thank you.
Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you. Sounds like a program. Thank you. Are there others who would like to address the board?
Good evening, Rachel Hobbs. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. So I was reviewing the board or the minute packet or the meeting packet, and I noticed that there's some stuff going on with the minutes again. One of the issues that I'm going to address is that the draft minutes for the last June meeting, there have been discussions. Have there been discussions about inserting a link of the superintendent's comments? This isn't an official record, these draft minutes. If they're approved, they become the official record of the meeting. And so I don't see those comments attached to the minutes. I see the link, but I don't see the comments attached. And I have a concern with having the link in there is because what happens when the link, or if the link becomes broken or something happens, then people can't use that resource, and these are no longer official minutes then. So I just want to know what the discussions are, what the best practices are on this particular matter. It's my understanding from the statute that these are official minutes, and they need to be bound and maintained by the district. I believe that the record needs to be the entire record and not just have an inclusion of the link. And I'm going to request that you not approve these minutes until a complete draft of the official meeting record is available for the public to inspect and on file, or in one file, one complete file. And I also believe that this is in accordance with the OMA. So, a couple other things. I've made several requests for the expenses and disbursements to be included in the meeting packet in the spirit of full transparency and trust within the community. What is the mystery of why Mr. Gerbaugh will not include those expenses and disbursements in the meeting packets? I had several exchanges, or a couple exchanges, with Mr. Gerbaugh about a concern that I had with items being dropped off during the school hours at the high school, and those items were placed in the hallway on a table. And he told me that, and I felt that that was a serious security concern, and he told me that that would be addressed at the next admin meeting, but in my discussions with him, that got tabled until the summer admin meetings, and I want to know what the status is, what we've come up with. You know, what are we doing to make our schools safer? What are we doing to make them a harder target? You know, are we talking about having one point of entry? I know this is not the only issue that I've raised, and I just want to see that something's being done. We can't wait for Lansing to do something. We have to do something now as a community. You know, it's not relying on coordinating with our local authorities and law enforcement. What are we doing now? I don't hear those discussions. I don't see anything going on. The trainings are not enough. We need to do something to make our schools more secure. Please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hobbs.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening. My name is Beth Vandergrift. I live in Milan, and I have 2 students that attend Milan area schools. I'm also the founder of Patriot Freedom Book Club, a group formed to combat censorship in our local school libraries. As I'm sure you're well aware, there's a concerted effort by other groups across the US to label dozens of books often found in school libraries as obscene or pornographic in order to have them removed from circulation. The books in question are often disproportionately about or authored by people of color or members of the LGBTQ+ community. I'm here to show my support for all of the library staff and teachers who are now under attack. I trust the professionals who staff our school libraries to make age-appropriate choices regarding the books available to our children. I appreciate that in recent years, there has been an effort to acquire more books that explore and celebrate the diversity of cultures and personal experiences in our community. And I'm not alone in my support. A survey conducted in March of this year by 2 independent research institutes at the request of the American Library Association yielded the following results, and I quote, "Large majorities of voters, 71% overall, oppose efforts to have books removed from their local libraries, including a majority of Democrats at 75%, Independents at 58%, and Republicans at 70%. Most voters and parents hold librarians in high regard, have confidence in their local libraries to make good decisions about what books to include in their collections, and agree that libraries and their communities do a good job of offering books that represent a variety of viewpoints," end quote. Also, as I know the board is already aware, as we have all seen on Facebook videos, yelling at school board members during a public meeting or complaining on Facebook is not actually an effective way to ban books. A U.S. Supreme Court decision in 1982 prohibited school boards from removing books simply because they don't like the content. Accordingly, Milan Area Schools has an established and legally necessary policy available on their website that outlines the procedure one would follow in order to have a book removed from the library. Perhaps following the policy would produce more results than screaming into the void. Earlier today, I started a GoFundMe to show our support of all the school library staff and to raise funds for them to use at their discretion so they can continue to promote literacy and maintain a diverse collection of works.
30 seconds.
As of 6 p.m., after only 8 hours, the fund was at over $400 and is still growing. I hope that anyone who is watching who is associated with our schools, and particularly our libraries, will take this as a testament to how much the majority of the community supports and appreciates you. If anyone would like more resources, links to the stats and policies I mentioned today, or to donate, you can find more information on the Patriot Freedom Book Club Facebook page. Thank you all, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Hello. Before my time starts, I just want to let anyone who has kids know that they probably should leave the room. That's just fair warning. Okay. I'm just... Okay, all right, exactly. All right, so I had no intention of coming tonight to address this topic since I've already discussed it with Mr. Gearbach and Mr. Sislo. However, I'm here because it was brought to my attention that people in the community have started a GoFundMe to fight the censoring of books in Milan schools. And a previous board member and possibly a current board member, family member, has donated to it. I want to read some of these books out loud. I want the people fighting to keep these books to hear with their own ears what exactly they're fighting for. We want inappropriate books to be removed from the school system. However, they would not be banned. They would still be available at the local library for parents to sit down and read porn with their children if they choose to do so. Milan Public Schools was one of the worst schools in the entire state when I searched for these books. These books have been verified by Mr. Gearbach to be in your school. Book number 1, Push. This story is about a 7-year-old little girl being raped continuously by her mother and father. My daddy stinks. The white shit drips off his dick. Lick it. I hate that, but then I feel the hot cha-cha feeling when he's inside me. A girl having her father's dick in her mouth knows things that other girls don't know. My hand is going through the smell of mama. My hand is pushing daddy's dick out of my face. Mama pushes my head down in her. I gag from the smell. Daddy pops my pussy in and out and I come. He bites me hard. He slaps my thighs like cowboys do horses on TV. I shiver. He orgasms in me. His body is shaking. My pussy is popping like grease in a frying pan. His dick is soft. He starts sucking my titties. I hate it. Afterwards, I go to the bathroom and I smear shit on my face. Book number 2, All Boys Aren't Blue. It's about a young man raping his younger cousin. You told me to take off my pants, which I did. You stood in front of me fully erect and said, taste it. At first I refused, but then you said, come on, Matt, taste it. This is what boys like us do when we like each other. I finally listened to you. He reached down and pulled your dick out. I quickly went to giving you head. I sat back and enjoyed it, as I could tell you were too. We both got up and went into the bedroom and got completely naked. The only thing I knew about anal sex previous to this was that it was painful. Nervous and drunk, I listened and got on my stomach, and you got on top and slowly inserted your dick into me. Book number 3, Identical. This one's about a daddy raping his 7-year-old little girl. Kaylee was secure in the aura of daddy's love. She tried to sit up, but daddy pushed her gently back down against the mattress. Stay like that for daddy. I want to teach you something new. He lifted her nightgown, rolled it up over her belly, coaxed her thoroughbred legs apart. She squirmed in protest. Don't move, daddy said. Don't be afraid. This won't hurt you. You'll like it. I promise. He kissed the length of her torso down to the small naked V. Book number 4, and these are books that are 4 of numerous in Milan High School.
30 seconds.
Lucky. After he did come in me, he got up off the ground and started dressing me. You're gonna have a baby, bitch. What you gonna do about it? He effed me. He effed me hard. When he came loudly and snorted. He began to knead his fist against the opening of my vagina, inserting his fingers into it 3 or 4 at a time. Something tore and he got wet and excited. He worked his whole fist up into my vagina and pumped it. After reading these books out loud, I would hope that this is one topic that the liberals and the conservatives can come together on. If you think this is acceptable for this trash to be in your schools, then there's no other way to put it. You are a sick pervert.
Hello, my name is George Elder, and for the...
I'm sorry, what's your name? I didn't get your name at the beginning of your comments.
Jamie McElvaney.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is George Elder, and for the record, I'm out of uniform, so I'll be calling my employer and stating that I'm making comment in uniform. But anyway, I'm kind of concerned about the books in the school. This one's called Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Johnson, page 194. She did your homework and you ate her coochie. Page 194, because in that picture looked like Monday was once licking your box. Page 248, you just here to get some dick. That's in the Milan Middle School. Another one that's observed on page 246, you said, I tiptoed toward a door, peeking through the window at a boy. His pants around his ankles, squeezed between April's straddle legs, and she laid on top of the teacher's desk. That's inappropriate, and that's in the Milan Middle School. It's crazy. Mind to say, I'm out of uniform.
Can you just turn around for a sec? 'Cause I'd like everyone to see your shirt on the school board.
No.
Okay. I would just like to say a couple of things.
Can I get your name first?
Sure. My name is Gwen Lacroix. So first of all, I'd like to say, yes, maybe in middle school, those books are inappropriate. Those were from the high school library. And unfortunately, people go through situations like those situations. I wish they didn't happen. I wish that didn't happen. But I have a third grader here. Yeah, he left because he was uncomfortable with that because those books aren't in Simon's library, thank goodness. But my child takes out books on grammar because he wants to read them, on flowering plants because he wants to read them, and I want him to be able to have access to any books that are age appropriate. Obviously, the high school books are not age appropriate for him. And I am also concerned about safety in the schools. You know, I'm much more concerned that my child is going to get shot in school than that he's going to read an inappropriate book. The other thing I would like to say is that I grew up in London, England in the 70s and 80s in the shadow of World War II. I went to private schools in London because my parents taught at the American school in London. And on Jewish holidays, I was one of 5 children in school. So I am well aware of what burning books and banning books looks like, and it's just simply un-American. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others?
Hi, I'm Janet McFall. So I guess I didn't plan on talking tonight, but I used to work as a para in English classes, and I don't blame any teachers or and librarians for the choice, but there's somebody that must be the bottom line. But when I was in these classes, I was in junior English classes, and they were reading a lot of things, but one that stood out was called Kindred by Octavia Butler. So many situations of rape going on. I was in the halls with those kids after the times we're reading that book. There was way more sexual conversation than there ever was when we were reading other books. It was just promoting all of that, what are we doing? We gotta promote education, but why do we have to use those type of books? I don't get it.
Thank you. Are there others? We definitely hear your concern. I do want to remind folks that there is a policy. It's policy 9130, matters regarding instructional materials. So if there's a request or suggestion or complaint or grievance that relates to instructional materials such as textbooks, library books, reference works, and or other instructional aids used in the district, the following procedures shall be followed. The criticism is to be addressed to the principal in writing and shall include author, title, publisher, the complainant's familiarity with the material objected to, sections objected to by a page and item, and the reasons for the objection. And just a reminder, as part of that policy, no challenge material may be removed solely because it presents ideas that may be unpopular or offensive to some. You can find this policy at milanereaschools.org, our district, Board of Education. Then you click here for searchable Neola policies. Then you can click the search button in the upper right-hand corner and perform a search for 9130. And that's where you'll find that policy. Thank you.
Mr. Guillermo, can I ask a question? Have we received any complaints about any of the books that were mentioned today?
I have received 2 emails, but we have not received any complaints through the board policy procedure.
Thank you.
All right, next up on the agenda is routine matters for approval. I need a motion to approve the corrected minutes for the workshop meeting of May 24th, 2022.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Kiger.
It's been moved and supported to approve the corrected minutes of the workshop meeting of May 24th, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Freight.
I'm just curious about the attendance moving forward. I don't know, and moving forward, as long as you were properly signed in, that would be what is in the attendance, correct?
That's correct.
I'm not understanding what we were previously doing. I thought that that's what we were.
No, there's times to try to capture people that necessarily didn't sign in. Like if there were people that were, that we knew had attended the meeting or were on stage for some purpose, that was tried to capture who was attending the meeting. So without being able to capture that, we've gone to, if you've signed in, that's going to be the official attendance record if you've signed in.
Andrew, can I also add that if you speak at the meeting as well, so if you do not sign in but you speak at the meeting, you will also be listed as attended. But that's the only time. Or at any point during the meeting. So I think in the current board, the meetings, not the corrected minutes, but the other minutes that are on the agenda, we listed the gentleman who was here to honor Connie Cox. While he did not sign in because he spoke and made a presentation, he is included as attending.
Okay, so moving forward, the only attendance that will be on record is everyone is signing in.
Or speaks.
Or speaks.
I appreciate the clarification.
Good question.
So can I be very clear? So if, as we had with the tennis team, if you are in attendance to be honored, but you do not sign in or you don't speak, you will not be listed as attending that meeting. Just want to make sure we're all clear.
Any questions or concerns? All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the corrected minutes of the workshop meeting of May 24th, 2022. Ms. Heika.
Farrow?
Yes.
Freight?
Yes.
Heika, yes. Kiger?
Yes.
Macchio?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next up is I need a motion to approve the minutes of the workshop meeting of June 2022, June 22nd of 2022.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Kiger.
Discussion?
Mr. Gira, or Mr. Sislo?
Yes.
Is there some concern that we should maybe look into having the link as Mrs. Hobbs is appropriated? I thought there was a summary of the comments. I didn't know that. I mean, is the link just the exact verbatim? I thought we were staying away from that. I'm a little confused on.
I would propose maybe that we adjust the minutes to just say the superintendent made comments for this meeting, and then we can move forward for future meetings in regards to this so that we can approve these minutes. So my proposal would be to strike through the link and say that Mr. Gearbaugh, superintendent, made comments. Would be something that I would move to append to this motion. Are there other thoughts?
Is there a way to revise the comments and like add a summary later? Like maybe table the minutes? Or there's,
That's a possibility too. I mean, there's many possibilities, so.
I think we have to check the policy. I think we should check the policy before we table it, because I think there are timing issues in terms of,
Yeah, I mean, the policy is that they're approved at the next meeting. So that's why I would propose that we just say the superintendent made comments, and then we can have a discussion of as far as how that's summarized and move forward for future meetings. Are there other thoughts, or do I mean, we can put a motion on the table, have a motion to table it as well.
I would just add for information that comments made at board meetings are not required by law to be part of the minutes. So approving them either as they are or as Mr. Sislo suggested would not violate any state laws.
I would add to that the Open Meetings Act does not require that any comments be included in a meeting minute. The meeting minutes as drafted today comply with the Open Meetings Act. They also comply with MASB guidelines. And as we've discussed in the past, maybe not the link, but the rest of the minutes comply with, best practices that are offered by the MASB.
Any other comments? Yeah.
Can vote on
Motion,
the
and if
current
we
motion.
want to vote it down,
Yeah.
then someone can make a second motion.
So we do have a motion and support to approve the minutes of the workshop meeting for June 22nd of 2022. Ms. Heika?
Freight?
no?
Heika, yes. Kiger?
Yes.
Macchio?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1.
Next up, I need a motion to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Macchio.
It's been moved and supported to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses. Any questions or concerns?
Mr. Sislo,
Mr. Farrow?
I had a few questions for Krista. They were readily responded to. The district is still waiting on some state and federal funds. One, those are received that should improve our bottom line. We're waiting for a lot of grant funding for the month of June. The scholarships that had been paid out, many of them were through the foundation. We also had the Edna Mead and the Muriel Gilbert Scholarship that run through the district. The district also received checks from a few local organizations for scholarships that we send on to colleges and universities once the scholarships have been awarded. No other questions on the check detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrow. Any others? It's been moved and supported to approve the bills and reimbursement of expenses. Ms. Heika?
Heika, yes. Kiger?
Yes.
Macchio?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Freight?
Yes?
Motion carries 6-0.
Next up is board organization. I need a motion to adopt the following resolutions: to name J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, United Bank and Trust, Fifth Third Bank, U.S. Bank, Michigan School District Liquid Asset Fund, Bank of New York Mellon, First Merchants Bank, and MBIA Michigan class as depositories for general fund, payroll, debt retirement, trust and agency, food service, athletic, and internal accounts for district monies for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, and that the following staff members' signatures be attached to the respective accounts as listed. General fund, payroll, and invoice, debt retirement, food service, trust and agency, athletics is the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the finance director. High school is the Milan High School principal, the Milan High School assistant principal and superintendent. The middle school is the Milan Middle School principal, the Milan Middle School assistant principal and superintendent. Simons Elementary is the Simons principal, finance director, and superintendent. Paddock Elementary School is the Paddock principal, finance director, and superintendent. Be it further moved that the superintendent or designee is authorized to transfer funds from savings to checking and checking to savings and is authorized to buy time saving certificates and invest district monies in accordance with state and/or federal law and board policy. B is to designate the superintendent or designee to post notices of meetings. C is the law firm of Troon Law Firm, PC, be retained as the district's legal counsel for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Further move that the superintendent is authorized to extend the retainer relationship with Troon Law Firm, PC for 1 year upon its anniversary date. Further move that other legal counsel may be retained for specific purposes as needed. And D, to approve the appointments that we will determine regarding the voting delegates and the alternate voting delegates for MASB. Do I have a motion?
Moved by Kiger.
Support by Farrow.
All right, it's been moved and supported. Is there anybody who would like to be the voting delegate for the conference, for the MASB conference? I'll go ahead and be the delegate. Is there anybody else?
You can put me on there too.
Carrie? Do we have alternate voting delegates?
I can be an alternate, Andrew.
Freight?
Sure.
Alternate? And other?
I'm going to be honest, I don't know that I'll be able to attend the
Okay.
the
And Heike?
conference.
Okay. All right. Discussion, concerns regarding this motion?
Can you repeat who the delegates are?
Yeah, the delegates are Sislo and Macchio, and the alternate voting delegates are Freight and Heike.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Sislo?
Ms. Freight?
Just in the interest of due diligence, and I think Mrs. Heike always asks this, so with Through Law, retaining that, do we ever bid that out or see if there's anything different to save the district any costs, or?
We have not bid it out. There are about 3 law firms in the state that handle school law specifically. I've talked with other superintendents, and the majority of the districts in the state of Michigan use Troon. They know our policies, they know our history. They work with us on a lot of individual situations, so a continued relationship with them is what I would recommend.
Good question. Any other concerns?
I will say, just since I've been on the board for 10 years now, one of the things that I've appreciated with Troon is that Mr. Dietzler has almost always, 99% of the time, been the person that is our contact and addresses things for us. So not only, are we using the same law firm and they know our background, but having Rob attending to a lot of matters, I think has been great with consistency. So, and I think he's done a terrific job.
Any other questions or concerns? Or comments? Right, it's been moved and supported to adopt the resolution to name the banks and the staff member signatures, and further moved that the superintendent or designee is authorized to transfer funds in accordance with state or federal law and board policy, to designate the superintendent or designee to post notices of meetings, and that the law firm of Troon would be retained as the district's legal counsel for 2022-23, and the voting delegates to MASB will be Sislo and Macchio, and the alternate voting delegates will be Freight and Heike. Ms. Heike?
Kiger?
Yes.
Macchio?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Freight?
Yes.
Heike, yes. Motion carries 6-0.
In support of the strategic plan initiative for business and operations to maintain and improve facilities and equipment to support a safe and innovative programs, I need a motion in regards to the school loan revolving fund to approve the annual loan activity application resolution for borrowing from the school loan revolving fund as presented in attachment A.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Kiger.
It's been moved and supported. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just a brief explanation. So this is borrowing that was approved by the voters when we voted on the different bond proposals, the last one being in 2009. Because we want to keep our millage rate as low as possible for our community members, we entered into an agreement with the state of Michigan, as do a lot of districts, to borrow money from the school loan revolving fund. The best way that I can explain this to most people is it's like a second mortgage. So during the early years of paying back the bonds, our local tax collections did not provide enough funds to pay back all of the current bondholders. So we are allowed to borrow from the state to make those payments. At some point, you then kind of click over to, because you've paid off some of the bonds, that your tax collections more than cover the cost of the bonds, and that's when you start repaying the school bond loan fund. We are once again this year borrowing, but we are about a year and a half from starting to pay back the school bond loan fund, because we have some major final bond payments this year, some bonds that mature, and that will get us into the payoff mode with the school bond loan fund. This really is a formality, but we do need board approval. We would have to come up with a lot of cash very quickly if we didn't approve borrowing from the school bond loan fund.
Any questions or concerns?
Oh, I will add, the school bond loan fund has a mandatory payoff timeline of 30 years, and we are on track to meet that timeline.
Any other questions?
Mr. Sislo.
Yeah, Mr. Farrow.
I just want to add, Mr. Gearbaugh summarized that quite well. The borrowing of the funds from the school loan fund has been a standard operating practice for a number of years. So I just wanted to comment that he summarized that quite well.
Any others? All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the annual loan activity application resolution for borrowing from the school loan revolving fund as presented in attachment A. Ms. Heike.
Macchio.
Yes.
Sislo.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Freight.
Yes?
Heike, yes. Kiger.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next up, in support of business and operations, I also need a motion to approve the USAC E-rate purchases as presented in attachment B.
Moved by Heike.
Support by Macchio.
It's been moved and supported to approve the USAC E-rate purchases as presented in attachment B. Mr. Gearbaugh.
So these purchases include a replacement for our firewall for the district, which is at the end of life. It also includes the installation and maintenance agreement for that firewall. It also includes updating our battery backup systems for all of our major network components, including our phones. And again, the installation and maintenance of those. And then it is also purchasing racks. So for those of you that don't know, all of the servers and everything that we have are in racks. And over the last few years, they've changed the normal size of those racks, and so new servers and things that we purchase can't be installed in the current racks that we have. So we're needed to update those. The nice piece of this purchase is that these are what are called E-rate eligible. A little explanation on E-rate. E-rate comes from the Universal Service Administrative Company. It's handled by the FCC Universal Service Fund. So a lot of us that pay phone bills pay a small fee on each phone bill to help with universal FCC items. And through that, they then provide support to governmental agencies based on several factors, one being the level of free and reduced lunch in the district. So we as a district qualify for 70% reimbursement. So the total cost of these purchases is $80,927. The E-rate fund will be covering $56,648.90 of that, and the district will be paying $24,278.10. It's already been through the entire E-rate process. They help us bid it out. They have to be approved by the E-rate agency. So the good thing here is for $24,000, we're getting $81,000 worth of needed materials for the district.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? It's been moved and supported to approve the USAC E-rate purchases as presented in attachment B. Ms. Heika?
Sislo.
Yes.
Pharaoh.
Yes.
Freight.
Yes.
Heika, yes. Kiger.
Yes.
Macchio.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next up, to help with our strategic goal of learning environment to improve and foster a safe learning environment that supports the academic, social, emotional, physical, creative, cultural needs of the individual, I need a motion to approve the student device purchases as presented in attachment C.
So moved. Support by Kiger.
It's been moved and supported to approve the student device purchases as presented in attachment C. Mr. Gearbaugh.
So these are our annual purchases of Chromebooks for our students. We normally replace at least 2 grade levels so that we're kind of on a 5 to 6 year cycle of replacing the devices. As the Chromebooks, that's about their life expectancy. This year we are adding a 3rd grade level. We normally replace the devices at the 6th and 9th grade, and then those students keep those devices through middle school and then they loop back around. So we are replacing the devices at 6th and 9th grade. This year we are also adding 2nd grade, as Paddock has not had a refresh to their Chromebooks. And actually you'll notice that it's a little bit different device. We're going to try and work with the 2nd graders to help transition them from the iPads they have in kindergarten and 1st grade to the Chromebooks that they will have in 3rd grade. And so actually for 2nd grade only, we are buying a Chromebook Touch. So the screen is touch sensitive and you can still do a lot of the things similarly to the way that you do them on an iPad, but they do have the keyboard and we can start to work on keyboarding skills at that point. So it would be a nice transition device. As you can see, they're really not that much more expensive, but we feel that that will be beneficial to the 2nd grade. And then at the Simons Elementary School, we are putting in 1 lab of 35 Chromebooks so that the students have those devices when they go to technology class. And then, of course, we buy protective cases for all of those devices.
Is there any thought to getting, as we go through the refresh, the similar devices in the other grades? I know in our household, one of the major complaints about the Chromebooks is it doesn't have the touch screen because everyone's so used to using it.
It's something we can investigate. I think what we have to look at is, while it's not a major cost, what are we looking at? About $23 per device.
Oh, okay.
Times 1,900 devices.
No, I gotcha.
Starts to get more expensive.
Nope, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the student device purchases as presented in attachment C. Ms. Heika?
Sislo.
Yes.
Pharaoh.
Yes.
Freight.
Yes.
Heika, yes. Kiger.
Yes.
Macchio.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next up, I need a motion to approve the social studies curriculum purchases as presented in attachment D.
Moved by Pharaoh.
Support by Heika.
Okay, before we have a discussion, we will have a presentation by Mr. McMahon in regards to the social studies curriculum, and I think we're going to go down to the front row to watch this presentation.
Well, good evening. You guys hear me okay? All right, thanks for giving me the time to present. It's kind of been a long time coming here with this work, as I'll explain a little bit, but it is good to be in front of you talking about finally our social studies purchase that we started a couple years back. I forwarded you a link to the presentation. Not much has changed since you received it. Some of the links I have you've already had access to, but I will access some of them in the presentation. So the first thing I want to do is I want to say I asked the teachers that were involved to not come tonight, to not give us a night in July. They gave plenty throughout the year, and if we were able to do this during the year, it might be different, but I said, please stay home, or hopefully you're on vacation or somewhere not anywhere near your work, because it's their time to take a break. But these are the folks that helped me through the process. So first I had a lead pilot committee. They're the ones that really helped me address the first formal meetings that we had to get at this work. And that's Sarah Farmer in 5th grade, Jake Lacrosse in 3rd grade, Eric Romans, who teaches at the middle school. He's transitioning grades this year. Herb Morlock at the high school. He's working with our seniors this year and probably next, and then myself. When it came time for the committee to forward on some recommendations for us to pilot some materials, we added teachers to that piece so we can get a more comprehensive overview. And that's Mary Jo Monroe, Tracy Klein, Lisa Drawheim, Terry Bigham, Stephen Price, Vaughn Price, and Matt Walling. All those folks ran at least one unit for us in the second semester of the year for us to get a better feel for the materials. Going back to the reasoning of why we're doing this, I noticed on the table, I think we've had these up here for a while, but the board priorities that we set a couple years back. Well, one of those, in fact, the goals, even before the board priorities, was actually a goal was to get a new social studies curriculum. But that transitioned to the priorities, but there's 3 of the 5 priorities are lined up directly with what we're trying to do here with the social studies curriculum. And that's expanding relevant opportunities for our students, individualizing the program, fostering community engagement and partnerships, and we picked 2 programs that can do that if we use them right, which I hope we do. And then supporting academic, creative, and cultural needs of individuals. So that aligns directly to priorities. We wanted to get a new curriculum. We needed one. A big reason for that is to create K-12 alignment. We talked about that. This goes back to when we even did a science purchase back in 2018. So I'll talk about alignment for a second. There is a little bit of a misunderstanding that there were supposed to be new social studies standards coming out, and that's not actually true. The Michigan K-12 social studies standards have been around for a while. They get updated, but it's the same set of standards that's been the base platform anyways. What is new is something called the C3 framework. It's been around for a couple of years now. It's not a new set of standards. There was a movement years ago to create national standards for social studies, and they were linked with Common Core, and that created some controversy. So the powers that be in the social studies worlds, university and academia, decided to create a framework by which you can apply your standards. So we still use the Michigan standards, and then there's this framework that we should be using to apply. The framework C3 stands for Career, College, and Civic Life. It's got 5 disciplinary areas, and it's all designed for what they call the arc of inquiry. And it's to get students to start inquiring a little more, to think a little more, and a little differently. And that's what the C3 framework does. And so we were looking for materials that would align to not only give us a K-12 structure, but also to be tied to the C3 framework. Another piece of the programs we're looking for is to connect ourselves a little closer to the disciplinary literacy frameworks. The essentials you might have heard about, remember we talked about the elementary school, the literacy essentials. Well, they've created documents for K-5 and 6-12 that are disciplinary literacy essentials. So it's really trying to get students to read, think, and write a little bit more actively in their content areas. It's across the content areas, the core content. And so we were looking for those 3 things within our programs. And then the third kind of major bullet was to engage our students with the technology we have. Let's get programs that are a little bit more resource rich and get them using those tools to engage a little more deeply. The instructional framework, I've already mentioned it, the arc of inquiry within the C3 framework and the disciplinary literacies, is to transform the experience. I mean, really what it comes down to is kind of one of the foundational reasons for public schooling is to socialize folks, to get people to be active participants in civilization and society, which is really kind of the cool thing about social studies, because that's the curriculum and the content that we can do that. And so we're trying to promote this idea of inquiry-based, get kids thinking a little bit more, thinking a little bit differently. It's not just about learning historical facts, it's about trying to engage civically. And so that was kind of the framework we're going by, but I do want to express the fact that the process doesn't outweigh the content. There's still a good, valid reason to have historical content, so it's our job to balance those things between knowing facts and knowing history and then being able to apply them to your life and to your situation as growing young adults. I did want to share with you, I don't know if you had a chance to look, but this is on our website. These are curriculum progressions. I'll try to link in and see what it does to my slide here. I'll just go to Simon's. So we have what we call curriculum progressions in all of our core areas, and they need to be updated routinely. But this is what we based it on. This is like our foundation of what we have been teaching as a guide for social studies. And so we were looking for programs that kind of lined up with this. The ones that we find that I'm going to recommend tonight aren't perfectly aligned. We have to adjust this, but they match. So that's what kind of like a foundation upon which we were building. Like, this is what we do, where do we need to go? But I want to share these with you because they'll change. We got to do some work this year. Hopefully we get the programs approved and we start using them, but we'll realign those documents as appropriate. Nothing radically would change. Maybe a unit goes from one grade level to the next, or the order we do them in the grade levels, that sort of thing. So to go through the selection process, we actually started back in 2019 with informal conversations, and that is not only amongst our staff, teaching staff and principals, but also with other curriculum directors in the county. I work with Wayne County quite a bit for instructional resources, so talking to folks over there. And you start to just have the conversation, hey, what are you using for social studies? What do you know? What are you learning? We would go to professional development at the administrative level around the C3 framework just to get our kind of bearings around what we're trying to do. Obviously, COVID, the pandemic put a pause in that. So we were able to kind of formalize our process last fall in 2021, and that was engaging that committee around some formal meetings. We held 6 formal meetings, multiple informal conversations. And in those beginning meetings, we went through and discussed the framework, the arc of inquiry, what we were looking for, and we narrowed down to 7 programs that we wanted to kind of dig a little deeper in to see if they were worth investigating further. I will show you kind of a notes document that we used. It was a guiding document for us to evaluate the curriculums, and you can see across the bottom of the different tabs. But this document was based upon 5 different domains. So it's, you can see domain 1 up here is inquiry based, like how strong does it go towards inquiry? We looked at supporting culturally relevant and responsive education as the second domain. I'm trying to scroll and look. A third domain was standards-based instruction assessment. How closely is it aligned within the C3 frameworks, and we can tie it to our Michigan standards because they're not all Michigan-based products. The fourth is high-quality, diverse sources. And that was going back to the technology. We have a lot of technology in our hands. We need to use that differently and better. And then the fifth was the instructional supports and continuous PD that our teachers can access. And so we went through, yeah. It's from a rubric that's based on inquiry-based social studies kind of curriculum evaluation framework. And we adapted a little bit to meet our needs, but we just tabbed it out for the different products. And we kind of went through, and these are the domains and the notes we took as we went through the resources to kind of vet down to what we wanted to try to pilot. So we, much like science purchase years back, we came up with a split decision. We didn't find one program, K-12, that met all of our needs. And so we are pushing forward on a pilot program. We pushed forward on a program called Inquiry Journeys. The company's called Inquired, with ED capitalized at the end. Inquire Ed is how they say it. And we piloted units in grades 1st through 5th, looking for a K-5 purchase there. And we do recommend this program for purchase. I'll explain a little more detail. And in secondary, we went with Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, HMH we call it. We did pilot units in 6th grade through 10th grade, but the purchase would be for 6th through 12th. I will say Plan B, because in the past we tried to pilot 2 programs, to evaluate 2 at one time. Plan B here was to not make a purchase. It was to just go back to our MESA units and what we used, and to renew a TCI for one more time with secondary, and that's not cost prohibitive, but that would have been our backup option, because we didn't find 2 programs that we thought were worthy of investigating. So we took that risk. We were going to look at 1 at each elementary and secondary and go from there and see what happens. Fortunately, we found 2 programs that we liked. So inquiry journeys will be our K-5. It's a recommendation I'm making to the board for your approval. I linked in the scope and sequence, and I actually want to show you that a little bit because I'll talk about it here. One really great thing about, well, one thing I'll say, these programs, they're capable of becoming so resource rich that they're overwhelming. And because they can load them up with content, and a lot of them have some sort of online platform, whether they're fully online or a hybrid model, they're just loaded and they get kind of overbearing. So one thing we really like about inquiry journeys is it's approachable. It narrows down to 3 units with a lot of modules in each unit per grade level. 5th grade actually has 4 modules or 4 units, but that's like doable. For the time we can commit to social studies, we thought this program, just from the get-go, was like, okay, this is achievable. And then when you look at the structure, every unit starts with an inquiry question. I can speak a little more knowledgeably about 1 in 2nd grade because I paid close attention to this. The middle one there, how can we respond to our changing landscape? That was the question that drives like the whole unit. And the students, it's broken down, it's streamlined into modules, and it's broken down to address that question in 4 different ways, with the idea of that at the end of every unit, they're creating some sort of project, or they have the ability to, whether we choose to do that or not, because that's heavy work. We want to do at least 1 project per grade level K-5, but you can do that in any one of the units. So it's actually producing something. That's the idea. That's kind of the arc of inquiry, is identify a question, evaluate your sources, get talking about it, and then produce something, do something with that information. So that's the whole design. We really like the structure of this program. And then we put it to use in the pilot sessions, and we got pretty terrific responses. It was instant student engagement. They were just glued to it right away because they have cool resources like that. The one I told you about, the changing landscape, started with a really great video that we actually showed other adults because we're like, you got to see this video. It's cool. It starts with a view of the Chicago shoreline and how it's a rapid movie, how it changed from, a marsh to the city it is, and it talks about a timeline through it builds, and that was the whole premise of that inquiry unit. It was really engaging. The kids loved it, and that just hooks them. It's a lot like Mystery Science that we bought at the elementary levels, where you hook them early with something cool, and then they go investigate. We found a lot of diverse other resources in terms of audio. One of the big things about this program is the protocols that you use to teach it, the inquiry-based teaching. That's going to take some work. Our PD is going to be focused on inquiry-based teaching more than knowing the content. Teachers know the content. And it's going to take some work. And so it's not as resource heavy. It's not, it is tied to the standards, but it's really heavy in teacher protocols. So we have to do our job of whittling through what's usable and what's is going to be user-friendly for our students, and getting to that end goal of driving from inquiry to something we can use. In lieu of having our teachers up here, this is something I added. I don't think you saw this yet from the weekend. I asked them to share some quotes about their experiences. And the first one, the first quote there at the top, it's really that resources are designed for differentiated learning, that there's a lot of options to engage kids in different ways, and that's a good thing for us. The second quote is really around the students were actively engaged, like throughout the unit. They were excited to do the unit, which is terrific. That's what you want. And then the third quote gets around the fact that it spurred discussion. Students were talking not only to the teacher about the content, but to each other. And that was a terrific experience. I will say, I observed the lessons throughout these units, and it was really great. There was a lot of cross-curricular connections. In 2nd grade, Mary Jo Monroe, she was doing the changing landscapes, and she was also doing the science, doing a weather unit. And she was able to tie those together and actually do some cross-unit or content projects or conversations, which was really cool. And then in 1st grade, it was Tracy Klein, and she was doing, I think hers was around weather, actually, that unit for social studies, the climate unit. But the kids were so engaged that she changed her vocabulary. She has a protocol for how she does vocabulary lessons, that she actually used the vocabulary from that unit and swapped out her vocabulary lesson and used those. And the kids actually designed it. They did a PowerPoint around that. It was just really great. You just see the kids were just buzzing about it. And she did that because they wouldn't stop talking about it. They're like, can we use this for vocabulary? She's like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And so they did. And so you can see right away that there's options for cross-curricular movement, which is what we would really like to do. That's not going to be easy, but at least it's there. At the secondary level, so 612, we moved on with, it's a little bit more formalized curriculum, which I would expect at a 612 level. It's certainly aligned to the C3 framework, and the Michigan standards tie into it. This one is really resource rich, much more than the K-6 program, as we would expect. And so the teacher's job here is less on the protocol piece, but navigating the content. We got to make the content palatable and able to be navigated by the students. It's similar in structure to the TCI program we had, where the plan would be to have a classroom set of texts, but then an online program that kids can access in class and then at home as well. They wouldn't be taking text home with them because they're, as you expect, the big, thick history books that we don't need to be lugging around. It's the ED platform, HMH, that we use for other programs. Our science program at grades 3-8, and everyday math is tied in to the ED platform. That's not right. McGraw-Hill is everyday math. Connect Ed works with some intervention programs at the elementary level, but we're familiar with the program, is what I'm saying, the platform of Connect Ed. They call it Ed. And it integrates well with Google Classroom and Schoology, which we use extensively at the middle school and high school. And then some words from the teachers that were able to pilot this. It was all 3 grades at the high school and 3 grades at the, or all 3 grades at the middle school and 3 grades at the high school. That it's research rich and engages for inquiry, which is what we want. So it kind of lines you up to do that. It makes that a little bit easier for the teacher. It's a very usable structure, that there's plenty of differentiation for the teachers to use to engage kids differently, and then also for the students in their learning. It is adaptable. The reading levels are interchangeable. You can upgrade them and change them for the level of the student that you need. And one quote that I heard in 2 classrooms at the high school and 1 at the middle school was that it was really tied to reading apprenticeship, which is a practice that we implemented back when I was the principal of the high school years ago, and that we try to hold on to because it's really good literacy practices in discipline, in the core disciplines. And a lot of the 3 of the teachers that I talked to specifically about this, they were like, it reminds me a lot of reading and apprenticeship, which is like, hey, that's great. The 4 domains of reading and apprenticeship, we can tie that to social studies. That's what we've been trying to do since I was here as principal. So we're really happy with the way that program works. It's going to take some work. It's heavy for the teachers, but we're confident that they're going to be able to get through. And then the last piece I want to share with you, I will also add the research around the programs, because I know you probably ask, is more about inquiry than about the success of the programs, because there's not a lot of great standardized assessments for social studies programs, so they focus more on the instructional piece of it. And I did link in a white paper, the Inquiry Ed, a summary of it. It's in the Inquiry Ed Journeys piece about the power of using inquiry for teaching. And that's where the research follows in both of these programs. And so I don't have anything linked in there from HMH. I can get that for you. I couldn't get the link to work, but that's the efficacy of the program is around the instructional piece of it. So another thing you need to know is about the professional development, because that's a big piece of a purchase. As we buy the materials, we got to be able to use them effectively. And there's 2 different approaches here because they're 2 different vendors. And so Inquiry Journeys, they utilize what they call inquiry advocates, which is essentially a train-the-trainer model. And their recommendation is 1 per building. Because we're a smaller school, and they said, nope, that will work just fine. Give us an inquiry advocate from Paddock and 1 from Simons, and then they'll get some specialized training, and then they will bring that back to the staff. We'll have our principals and myself tied into that training as well. But that's how they intend for that to work. And they have a really great PD program. They invited us to attend a lot of the sessions. Some were applicable to us, some were not. I mean, they have like so many you can just choose from that are free for teachers to go to. And we jumped in a bunch of them. And they were great, and they're all teacher-led. So it could be teachers from across the country leading a session on a different inquiry in a specific unit in a project they used. And if you want to dial into that, you could. And you could interact with them a little bit because it was live, but it was online. HMH, for the secondary option, what we did is we purchased hours of PD from them, and we can purchase more if we need, but we started with 8 hours. And the idea there is it's online but live. It's not recorded, so we have to schedule it, and they'll be with a person one-on-one. The plan there, and I have to work with the principals, is we're going to schedule a 1 or 2 hour kickoff before the beginning of the year. And part of that they've already done in the pilot, because of our size, like at the middle school we had 3 pilot teachers, we have 3 social studies teachers. So there's a new one in the mix now, hopefully soon. So they've already seen some of that. They know how to use the platform, but we'll take that a step further, and then we'll get into the content. And then we have individualized PD that we can access per the course content. So each grade level can have their own. And so we're just going to schedule it as we need. We'll do the kickoff training in the beginning, and then we'll probably meet, somewhere end of October, maybe around that PD day that's usually around the 30th. And we'll see how it fits into our schedule. If I want to pull social studies teachers and the principals will let me during a PD session, we'll do that. If it's after school, maybe we'll pay them an hourly stipend to do some extra training. But that's how that's going to work. So that's kind of, you have to schedule it with them, but it's sort of when you need it and when you want it. So that is the plan for professional development, and both companies are great. The vendors are really supportive. There's a live customer support for both of them. I wouldn't say around the clock, but I can access them most time I need to. So that is my summary. Okay.
You okay?
Is he talking and walking?
Can you expound upon the pilot just a little bit more, like how many teachers, how is it just a lesson, or what's the pilot entail?
Essentially, so we had two different pilots. So there was elementary and then there was secondary. So elementary, we piloted in first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And they got access to a unit. They actually they can cater the access you get, so they only gave us access to one unit per grade level. Another piece I didn't mention is the units also tie in novels for the students. I had to buy those separate. It's just one classroom book that's a read aloud, but that was kind of cool to see because they can connect that to their literacy units. So we got access to a unit for those teachers, and then I bought the text or the novels they needed. One grade needed 2, others needed 1. And then they just ran with the unit. And we attended trainings throughout. We had a chance to ask questions about how this works. And they just ran with it. That's what they do. They just play with it, really, essentially. And at the high school level, it's different. They give you access to the full course, basically. And they sent classroom sets of text. So if we order it, we already have them in some of the grade levels. And so they just have to kind of pick a unit that fits in with, you don't want to shake up your plan for the year. And for example, there's a world history unit, and Terry Bigham does world history. He was able to find a unit that fits in with what he was going to do naturally next. So it's not like they gave us one. We just picked one. And then you just really go through and you pilot. You try things. You explore. The high school and middle school have what's called guided workbooks for the kids that would be consumables. They would get those every year. It's a paperback collection of, it's a reading guide with graphic organizers in there to help you process the content. And so we got those, we played with those a little bit, and then we played with the assessments. There's multiple choice, there's short answer. Because some of the questions the teacher have about, is it easy to grade? How do I grade? How does it integrate with Google Classroom and Schoology? And so we just kind of tinker a little bit and get the kids engaged, and then we get feedback from the company with, we had questions, we weren't able to make this work, and this worked really well, and so.
How is student engagement measured at all as part of the process? Do they see a difference between the old curriculum and the new?
Nothing formal, just anecdotally. I could see it tangibly when I walked in the rooms and the teachers all reported out, because that was one of my questions, how were the students responding? That was a big thing. If the students aren't engaged or aren't seeming to enjoy the product, then we have an issue. And it was, high school, at the end of the year, they're engaged as much as they're going to be in any program. They seem to respond pretty positively to it. I actually went into classrooms and we paused it and said, hey, tell me a little bit about this. What do you think? And the kids were able to give some honest feedback, like, it's really clunky, we can't log in here. And that was feedback I gave to our tech department. They were able to fix they whitelist a certain site so it gets a little more free access. The response was really positive. The younger students, it was extremely positive. They loved it. Okay. The upper grades, it was just, it's more like a practical feedback of it's usable, we like it,
Are there any concerns for the flow from 5th grade to 6th grade? And will the 5th grade and 6th grade teachers have an opportunity to work together to make it seamless?
No more concerns about flow from 5th to 6th than I would have about any of our content areas, and we do need to do more, I think, with that concept in general, not just in social studies. But this is a more formalized approach to social studies, and they're connected. They're tied to the inquiry, the framework, and the standards. And so, no, it's going to be more than what we had in the past. So I'm good with that piece in terms of social studies content. I think we need to do more transition work, but yeah.
Of the purchases that you're recommending tonight, how did they score as against the other products as it related to the cultural learning and the diversity goals?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the domains we looked at, and they were higher in that area. We didn't quantify a score, so I don't have a number I can report to you,
Okay.
but they certainly scored high in that area. It was interesting. I was sharing with Brian a little bit, just as I was processing this experience and putting together this presentation, that back when we did science, companies were really forthright about their approaches there, and now it's just ingrained. It's just a piece of what they do, and it's like they don't necessarily jump out and say, we're doing this to prove that they're doing it. It's just in their work, and it's what they talk about. I mean, there's on their website, you have links to the website. It's just ingrained. They know that, especially when it comes to social studies, right? We're talking about cultures and historical perspectives and how we can relate that to our lives to make future decisions. So that has to be representative of other cultures and has to be diverse and inclusive, and so it is.
Brian, the novels that you mentioned, would those be included with this, or would that be a cost above?
Yeah, no, you make
beyond?
separate purchases on those because they're different publishers and they're not vendors of other companies. So.
Okay.
But it would be 6 books in 3rd grade or maybe 12.
Okay.
But, yeah.
And then is there an opportunity, I don't know if we know what the costs would be, to get more than one trainer for the elementary schools? I just want to make sure that, we're still, I think, slipping into what our new normal is, and everyone, I think, is still adjusting to in-person school, and I'm a little leery of overwhelming one teacher to be responsible to roll this out to the entire, because it is different than the middle school and the high school where that's the only subject, I don't want to say the only, but that's my main subject I teach, whereas for our elementary teachers, they're responsible for all of the subjects, and then I want to roll out new curriculum, but I want to make sure that we're cognizant of the strain that puts on our teachers.
Yep. So
Not that you haven't been, I don't want to accuse
I'm totally
you.
open to that idea.
Okay.
In fact, I said, I was careful in my wording, they recommended 1 per building, because I actually recommended 1 per grade level, and they said, that's a lot, we can go 1 per building. So I can go either way. There's no change in the cost of the program.
Oh.
If we pay a stipend for teachers to do some extra work with me in the evenings or something, that might be a minimal cost, but that's not a factor necessarily. A few more hours of stipend is not a real big deal. So I'll explore that further with the principals if we think that's a better model. They're open to it. They just said that might be too much. With having the number of teachers you have, we just would recommend 1. But they said we could, so.
Other questions or concerns? Thank you, Mr. McMahon.
Yep, I just want to make one last point. I just want to thank the teachers that I presented. They did a ton of work, and it was a real busy year, and we were flexible. We did some hybrid meetings, some online meetings. We got vendors to work with us, but they put in a lot of time, and I'm really grateful for their work. I'd love to have them here because they'd show the passion for it, but they need some break. So thank you to the teachers for all the work.
Absolutely.
I also want to thank Mr. McMahon for all of his work with this committee and with these teachers and helping them and guiding them through the process. This is one of those areas where we do truly implement shared leadership. This is not a top-down selected curriculum. It was selected by our experts in the field. The one thing that Ryan does take on, and he does a tremendous job at this, is once a product is selected, it's amazing at how much negotiations there are with the companies that we purchase the products from, and he does a great job of trying to get the price down, and then you'll see also splitting that over a 2-year time frame. That is not their normal mode of operation. It's normally 1 payment up front. But in order to assist the budget and spread that out a little bit, he was able to negotiate 2 equal payments in the first 2 years of the 6-year purchase.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan, and teachers, for sure.
I will add that my main negotiation strategy is talking about how conservative my boss is when it comes to financials. I just start with, I'm never going to get that approved. That's my bargaining chip.
So as Mr. McMahon stated, this does touch a lot of areas of the strategic goal, primarily academic programs to expand relevant and individualized learning opportunities for all students. We do have a motion and a second to approve the social studies curriculum purchases as presented in attachment D. Ms. Heike.
Farrow.
Yes.
Freight.
Yes.
Heike, yes. Kiger.
Yes.
Macchio.
Yes.
Sislo.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next up, in support of our strategic goal around personnel and leadership, in order to recruit and retain skilled, passionate, and effective staff who are committed to the success of Milan area schools and its place in the community, we are going to consider teacher appointments. I need a motion to appoint the following people to the teaching positions listed. The base salaries listed effective for the 2022-2023 school year. Rachel Staley, a Paddock social worker. Catherine West, Paddock speech pathologist. Craig McMahon, Paddock first grade. Brianna Wisniewski for Simon's teacher consultant. Emma Packard, a Simon's teacher consultant. Sierra Moran, Milan Middle School STEAM teacher. Christina Rankin, Milan Middle School science teacher. And Krista Lerman, a Milan Middle School teacher consultant.
Moved by Macchio.
Support by Kiger.
It's been moved and supported. Discussion.
Mr. Gearbaugh, how did we advertise these positions?
These were advertised through our website, also through all of the Michigan associations, and they go out to k12jobs.com, which is a national posting site that we now are implementing whenever we post a position in the district. Obviously, we also do a lot of, in this day and age, we do a lot of calling of universities and recruiting. I have attended a couple of job fairs that brought in a few candidates. In the more difficult to fill, we spend a lot of time calling universities and nudging folks to get people to apply and to get their students to apply.
And then are all these positions budgeted for?
Yes.
Mr. Gearbaugh, or Mr. Sislo? I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Mr. Gearbaugh, are all of these replacement?
They are either replacement, let me go to my notes, I don't want to misspeak.
Or retirement for the first grade?
Replacements of retirements, resignations. There's also one that we had been contracting with for a speech path for a while, and we decided to make it a district position. It's getting more and more difficult to contract, and actually contracting can be more expensive at times. So I'm trying to find, hold on one second. I know I've got it in the notes.
No, that suffices, Brian. I appreciate that. I have a question, or actually more of a concern, if you will. Within the budget, it's my understanding that we're using the ESSER 3 monies to cover the salaries and the benefits for these positions. Am I correct on that?
Not for these positions. To cover the salaries of staff is a major use that we are using for ESSER 3. That came out of our community surveys, that came out of our staff surveys, that they felt that the number one way we could use ESSER dollars to help our teachers overcome some of the delayed learning was to keep class sizes lower in all of the grade levels. And so that's one of the things that we are working to do next year, and the union is very understanding that those class counts will change following next year when ESSER dollars no longer exist.
So there is a risk that we will have a potential of having to lay off some of these teachers due to lack of funding.
I would say that's a minimal risk with the turnover that we have and the normal retirements and folks taking jobs closer to home. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but I would assume that's a pretty low risk possibility.
Even given the drastic drop in our numbers, our student numbers with our foundation allowance?
Yep, that's been considered, and this is based on the number of pupils that we had at the end of last year.
Which is the 1,900, Brian?
Yes.
And are we using, the ESSER money that we are using towards this, is that just for this year?
Yes.
So even though it can go through till 24, the thought is to use it now, this 22 to 23 year, correct?
Correct. From our community input and our staff input, this is how they wanted and felt was the most effective way to use our ESSER dollars to support our students.
Mr. Gearbaugh, as I recall from your presentation on the ESSER $3, we were significantly limited in how those dollars could be spent, right? They weren't like the original COVID dollars where it was fairly easy to justify the expenditures, but with the ESSER 3, there were significant more limits. Is that right?
Correct.
In just regards to the Paddock social worker is an additional social worker at the district level. Simon's teacher consultant was a resignation. Like Mr. Gearboss said, the pathologist is a position that was contracted. The Paddock first grade is a retirement, and then the rest are resignations. Any other questions or concerns? All right, it's been moved by Macchio and support by Kiger to appoint the following people to the teaching positions listed at the base salaries listed effective for the 2022-23 school year. Rachel Staley, Catherine West, Craig McMahon, Brianna Wisniewski, Emma Packard, Sierra Moran, Christina Rankin, and Krista Lerman. Ms. Heika.
Freight?
No?
Heika, yes. Kiger?
Yes.
Macchio?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1.
All right, next up are board issues. In regards to our strategic goal around communication, community engagement, to develop and implement a comprehensive plan to foster student, family, staff, and community engagement and partnerships. We do have an update from our co-chair of the Communications Committee. Ms. Karen Hunt is here to provide that update. Well, we'll make sure the mic, we need the speaker mic on.
It's on, good, because I don't have a loud voice. So my name is Karen Hunt Lambert, and first we'd like to thank the
I'm
board.
sorry, I apologize, Karen. I was looking at your email. It's
Yeah.
Karen Lambert. I apologize.
Hunt is my maiden name, so. First, we'd like to thank the Board of Education for forming the Communication Committee with the goal to improve transparency and to create a culture of two-way communication in the district. Second, we appreciate the board's answers to our questions about what is going well and what areas they would be interested in improving communication in the district. We learned communication has been a major concern of board members for about a decade, possibly more, and was something that came up often when developing the district's strategic plan. As we have discussed the committee's and board's expectations for communication, I was surprised to find most of the concerns and solutions raised were similar, though there were also differences. One unique concern that the committee raised is that many committee members were unhappy that questions are repeatedly brought up during board members and left unanswered, leaving others who were listening wondering. We brainstormed a list of possible solutions to give the community answers, even if not immediately during the meeting. Communication Committee concerns also aligned with board member concerns in many ways. There were committee members and board members who expressed a need for regular opportunities for the public to ask the board questions outside of public meetings, a need for more proactive communication of what the board is doing, and better ways to handle controversial topics. In addition, there was the perception that not everyone understands the Open Meetings Act or the different roles of the superintendent and the board. One concern of board members that we will take into consideration is they sometimes plan meetings or events designed to provide information to the public and have poor attendance. One recommendation we recently made was to reinstate your quarterly big red board chats. We hoped that this would allow people to learn about board issues, raise concerns, and receive immediate feedback. The committee also felt like the format of people meeting one-on-one builds trust and unity. These should be well advertised and consistent, even if attendance is poor, to keep communication channels open. We are working toward writing our recommendations for the board. If there are community members who have additional concerns or solutions, they can contact us at our committee email listed on the board website. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Next up is the district scorecard update in regards to the strategic plan. We've reviewed this back in, let me make sure, I think it was February, and then again in April. So we have committed to formally reviewing this quarterly along with Mr. Yearbaugh's performance. And we're going to walk through, Mr. Yearbaugh is going to walk through the scorecard that we went through for the last update in regards to any changes with it and other data that's been added. So, Mr. Yearbaugh.
So you have a scorecard in front of you. This was made available in the board packet, and I will be posting it on the district website after this evening's presentation. So the first change that the community will notice and you will notice is, as we did my quarterly evaluation review, you actually did determine a category of objective met, objective on track, or objective not met. And for each of those objectives listed in the 5 goals, we have color-coded those as to where they are, and we will do that quarterly as I do my updates to you for my evaluation process. I can tell you that our last discussion about this during my evaluation was over a month ago, and there are some of these things that are red that are already being addressed. Some of it was COVID delay and availability of staff. The second changes that you will see, I'm going to talk through each of them page by page and the updates that we made. So the first is under academic programs, and we list the test scores, and you will see that under NWEA for math and ELA for the Paddock, Simons, and middle school buildings, we do now have that end of year data in. We report this, and this is how my evaluation is conducted. We report those on the conditional growth that students demonstrate. Just a reminder, that basically takes every student and compares them to students that were in the same starting place as them across the country, and ranks our students' growth against the growth of students across the country. So I want to keep at least 3 years of data available to you because, again, my evaluation is based on a 3-year weighted average, 50% on the current year, 30% on the first prior year, and 20% on the second prior year. So I also kept an extra year of data on here for the time being because I think it was important to kind of see the pre-COVID numbers and then see the dip that occurred, and I'm glad to report as we look through these that we are seeing a lot of rebound this year, and that our data is getting, if not fully back on track, very close to back on track to where we were pre-COVID, in some instances well ahead of where we were pre-COVID, and we're very excited about that. So you can look at the 2022 NWEA math and ELA growth components for each of those tests, and then the new 3-year average.
Brian, can I ask, so when I see the NWEA math at Simons, when it's a 2021, and I don't want to call it a score because I'm not sure that's the correct word, but I have a 40, and then in 2022, I have a 64.2. What does that 24.2 increase mean?
So what that means is, basically, if you took every student at Simons and you compared them to their peers, and their peers are everyone that had the same starting RIT score when they took the fall test, and then you compare where they stand in that lineup against those same peers on the spring test, it's what percentile on average our students fall. So that 64.2 represents our students on average are performing better than 64.2% of their peers across the country. And again, every student is held, well, not every student, but every student that has the same starting RIT score is compared to their peer group. So it's a very complex process that NWEA does for us and provides that nationwide comparison. Does that help?
Yep,
So some of the reason, obviously, that maybe we saw a dip during COVID that maybe didn't happen nationwide was not every state handled COVID the same in their public school systems. And so We are glad to see the rebound and see that our students and our staff, through a lot of hard work, have gotten us back on track in our continual growth on those tests.
Brian?
Yes.
If I may, on 2020 where it says we have no data, do we not have any fall data? Or that's the 29?
This is all based on growth, and
Okay.
so we weren't able to do the growth factor. And so almost every district is not using that year. So they actually, NWEA is actually using the growth. And part of what we do is we do, this data is based on a fall to spring growth. So it measures truly a school year.
And do we not test fall, winter, spring?
Yes, we
So we-
test 3, but you want to look at the growth that was accomplished through the entire year. So that's how we're then compared against all of the other schools across the country. A lot of schools didn't have data in 2020, so we chose not to use that data in my last evaluation, and so we're carrying that forward. So the 3 years of data that we're using, or will use in my next final evaluation, are 2022, 2021, and 2019.
Okay. And then as far as the high school goes, do we have any data on the AP scores and classes and testing as far as that goes? Or is
So-
that a different area?
Well, so right now, you'll notice under M-STEP, those scores are not yet available. We don't have them readily accessible, and they're not public yet. And therefore, we don't have the state averages, and they are the ones that give us the SGP, which is really the exact same as the CGP. The state just decided to call it something different than NWEA does. And at the high school level, we do not have the final SAT scores and those other scores. So those will be filling in as we do our next update on these. And in the high school, we do look at SAT, and we compare to the state and that group of MASB peers that you folks selected back a year or two ago.
Will we have AP scores, though?
I can look into adding AP scores if that's not something that was requested on the scorecard, but I can look into adding those if that's something that the board would like to see.
I thought it was something that we were looking at. My apologies. Because the SAT scores go follow along with College Board and the AP scores in our programs that we offer currently. It would be nice to know how those are going.
So I think just to echo Ms. Heike's comments, all the areas are higher than they were in 2021. And then even for Paddock through middle school, 4 of the 6 are higher than what we were pre-COVID in 2019. And the other 2 are within points. So it's pretty remarkable.
Yes, our teachers did a tremendous amount of hard work this year to get our students back on track. The next page I did not alter at this point because all of those sports were completed and those were the numbers provided for this year. So we will look at changing that as we start to get into the new seasons next year. The promotion rate ending June 2022, I did update that from June 2021. So you can see the promotion rates at each of the grade levels. The graduation rate for 2022 is not yet available. It takes the state of Michigan quite a while to get those out. And then schools have a time to review it and look at each individual student that is marked as not graduate, and we have the ability under very specific guidelines to address those students.
Brian?
Yes.
Do we typically always have the 100%? Like everyone carries over from 1st to 8th grade, and is that going to be impacted by the read by 3? Is that going to change?
Read by grade 3, we had a few students that qualified under read by grade 3, and all of the parents of those students followed the appropriate procedures to not have their child retained.
Is that something that we're going to continue to do, or?
That's ultimately the read by grade 3 is not our decision necessarily. The parents have a right to appeal and address that using the appropriate documentation. It's fairly common in a lot of districts to not retain in those middle grades. There's a lot of research that shows it's very detrimental to the student and actually causes more long-term harm than good. If we're going to retain, we really try to do that early and diagnose that in kindergarten. And that's also the purpose for the Young Fives programs is for students who just truly maybe aren't ready for kindergarten. So Young Fives actually, the way the state handles it, Young Fives are actually considered kindergartners who are then all retained. That's the way the Young Fives program is defined by the state of Michigan.
So while this is just June of '22, this is fairly typical.
Yes.
Thank you.
Under the next section, learning environment and culture, you will see that with the help of the administrators, we included the monthly attendance percentage for the remaining months of the year, and we included the disciplinary actions for the remainder of the year. And then we have the list of ongoing learning environment and culture initiatives. We will probably be adding some to that list next year.
Can I ask, Brian, how is this attendance rate calculated? Because I recall during, I hate to keep saying during COVID like it's over, but when we were in remote learning and hybrid learning, the state had a very specific way that we were supposed to count contact with students, and I assume we're not doing that anymore?
No, this is back to true
Okay.
Students sitting in desks in the classroom. This data is all based on that. And our Power School software is actually where I get these numbers. I pull them right from Power School, and that's the state required. So we have to, at the end of each school year, we have to turn into the state of Michigan what's called a 75% calendar. We have to demonstrate that we had at least 75% attendance on every school day, or you're not allowed to count it as a school day. So the software actually has a state-approved built-in report that pulls these numbers, and that's where I'm getting them from, is from that system. So it's pulled right out of Power School based on teacher attendance entered.
And then when I'm looking at the disciplinary actions, is this typical for a school year? Or have we compared it to other school years to see how the last school year stacked up?
Other than the middle school, they're all typical. The middle school, I've said this to a lot of people, COVID had a pretty drastic academic effect on our youngest students, our K1-2s that were kind of in the middle of just starting to learn reading and just starting to learn math. And so the major academic kind of hit was more so focused there. Behavior incidents really gets more to maturity and self-control and respect of others. And that's something that middle schoolers are working on developing, and not being around other middle schoolers consistently during the COVID situation caused a great deal more discipline at the middle school. I will tell you, the majority of those are truly linked to disrespect of each other or disrespect of staff. I've talked with other superintendents across the county and across the state, and all of their middle schools experienced pretty significant increases in discipline this school year. So we have some things that we are putting in place, and some different conversations that we are having to work our best to decrease those middle school suspensions next year.
Can I make one request that when we do this in the next quarter where this data is available, so we're July, so that'll be October, right? Will be the next quarter.
Okay.
Can we, let me get to my real question now since I'm thinking out loud. Can we have, in the attendance and the discipline, can we see the 2021-22 number and compare that to the 2022-23 number?
Okay, so
then could you
for 1 year, keep at least 2 years data in those sections?
Yeah, so you can kind of build this out each quarter as we progress through the next school year.
Yep.
So then we can see how attendance is stacking up, how discipline is stacking up.
Yes.
And then as we, at least in my head, as we watch these things, we can see if there are patterns or trends that we need to address, and then maybe can address them.
Yep, so as I start adding attendance and discipline with the assistance of our administrators, we'll keep last year's data there as well.
Thank you.
So that we have it to reference. Moving on to communications and committee engagement. That's some work that we need to do, and some of that will be helped by the survey that we more recently conducted, and some committee work that we need to do. But I did insert into this update the current communication methods that are used by each of the buildings, and I received that information from the building administrators. So at least we have a starting point and a baseline set of systems that we're using, and that will help us then as we work through making every effort to improve that.
Just what is the status for sharing the K-12 survey data? Just
I actually have that in my superintendent's comments,
Okay.
so I will give an update on that during my comments. The next is personnel and leadership. And so I did click this over from last year to the new school year, and you can see the resignations and retirements and the new hires. So those are as up to date as they could be at the development of this report. And then in the operations, I did make a few minor changes to some of the things that we are accomplishing in each of those areas. And then I changed the district fund balance and the fund balance above 10% to reflect that is in the June amendment instead of the April amendment. And then obviously we will update that in accordance to the audit once we receive that final audit of those numbers.
And then when's that expected?
We receive the audit, I'm trying to remember. It's conducted in August. I believe the auditor comes and reports it to you in October.
Okay.
Any other questions on the updated scorecard?
No, I just am really impressed with the growth in the NWEA for those areas. The fact that we're above where we were in 2019 and significantly above where we were last year is definitely a testament to all the work that's been done. So.
I would say the same thing, although we haven't seen the 2022 SAT scores, but even when you compare the 2021 SAT score to the 2019 SAT score, which is pre-COVID, I see that we are, even before COVID, we were addressing these score issues, and so I'm happy to see that this work continues.
The one thing that I will add is that we hope that our trend continues, that our M-STEP scores do, while they're calculated differently, they do tend to at least kind of follow our NWEA scores, because NWEA is very tied to our state standards and things, just like the M-STEP is. So as soon as that data is available and published, we will get it included in this document.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for presenting that this evening. Next up is live streaming comments during public meetings. I need a motion to allow or not allow, we need to figure out, live streaming comments during the public meetings.
Mr. Cicillo, I move to not allow live streaming comments during public meetings.
Support by Farrell.
Right. I have a motion and second to not allow live streaming comments during public meetings. Discussion. This was brought up back in February for us to discuss. We decided to get a legal opinion in regards to it. We have received that legal opinion, and I've shared that with the board. So if there's other discussion or comments regarding that, we can have that now.
I support not allowing the comments in accordance with the legal opinion that we received. Allowing the live comments puts us in a position much like we were concerned about, that if there are dangerous or hurtful or misinformation comments that are made, and quite frankly, if they're just blatantly racist or homophobic or transphobic comments that are made, there's nothing we can do about it. We have to leave it there for all the world to continue to read in perpetuity. And I have a problem with having to allow individuals who may not even live in our community or have any contact with our community at all to be able to post things like that and us have to leave it there. I also have concerns about questions that may be posed and what our obligations are related to that, and a host of things that have been addressed by the legal opinion. So based on the legal opinion,
I support not allowing the live comments, which I understand is in line with how at least some other districts are also handling this situation. So we will not be an outlier, and we are not an outlier at this moment by not allowing the comments.
Other thoughts?
Mr. Sislo?
Yeah, Ms. Frate.
Well, I can sincerely abide by and appreciate the legal opinion. I'm a little concerned as to what our concerns were when we had them on for Facebook, and that we'd had them on before, and now we are due diligently concerned about where they could go. I just look at our history, and to my knowledge, I could be very wrong. I'm open to understanding that. It didn't seem like it went down that path. So I'm just voicing a concern that we didn't do this before, and now we find a need that we have to, and why it took turning them off for us to look through that avenue.
Mr. Sislo?
Yeah, Mr. Farrow.
I just would like to add that when we were using Facebook, we didn't have a legal opinion. Now that we have a legal opinion, I think it's important for the district to follow that legal opinion.
Just a point of information, Facebook also does not allow you to turn off the comment feature. That's not an option. So we had no choice when we were using Facebook.
When it was streaming, we were
Yes.
yeah. I mean, the legal opinion does mention it in some way. It says, even though the board previously permitted real-time comments during the live stream meetings, it's of no consequence. A forum once created need not remain open perpetually. A government entity, including a school, may always close a forum. I think the one thing that I took from the opinion was that a board meeting is not a public debate. It is time for the board to conduct the district's business. The comment feature, which creates a forum for real-time debate and commentary, is therefore inconsistent with the board's meeting purpose. I think that pretty much summed it up.
And I'll add that if we say this a lot at our meetings, that if someone wants to reach out to us, or someone has a question, or if someone would like to comment even on something that has happened or is on the agenda of a board meeting, for the board meeting, they don't even have to physically come to the meeting, although that's an option. They can email us, which many people do many, many times, and that email correspondence can even go back and forth, which it does. And quite frankly, they could call a board member if they had a very specific question and wanted to have a conversation. I've been stopped at Kroger and at Wilson Park. There are many ways that we can communicate with each other, or that questions or concerns can be addressed, and it doesn't have to be through the YouTube comments, which then open us up to some liability.
Any other thoughts or comments? It's been moved and supported to not allow live streaming comments during public meetings. Ms. Heika.
Heika, yes. Kiger?
Yes.
Macchio?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Freight?
No.
Motion carries 5-1.
Next up on the agenda is the Big Red Board Chats, which does present an opportunity for some more two-way communication with the board. As Karen talked about with the communications update, the committee did make a recommendation regarding Big Red Board Chats to having them at least quarterly. I did email out a potential schedule to the board, so this is a draft, but hopefully we can get it formalized. I guess I would consider this a first reading. The thoughts were to have a quarterly Big Red Board Chat. I was thinking some of the suggestions at the communications meeting was to have one before the board meeting, so like from 5:30 to 6:45. So that's one of the times, and then also I proposed to have them on a Tuesday so that we're not always having things on Wednesday. So I have tentatively I have one, I put one out there for September 14th, which would be Wednesday before the board meeting, kind of like back to school. The next one would be January 17th, which is a Tuesday, which would be after winter break. The third one would be March 22nd, which would be a Wednesday before a board meeting, that would be before spring break. And then one on June 20th, and a Tuesday that would kind of be an end of the year. So that was my thought behind this schedule. It's definitely open up for conversation, comments. If we want to make any changes, we can finalize it, and then we can start to fill this in with attendees and at least get it published so that people are aware when these Big Red Board Chats are going to be. And just a reminder in regards to the Big Red Board Chats and the Open Meetings Act, anytime there's a quorum for the board, which is 4 or more of us that meet together, that is potentially considered an open meeting where it would have to be publicized, we'd have to allow public comment, it would have to be posted, and we would have to follow all the regulations of the Open Meetings Act if 4 or more of the board members participated, as there's a chance that there could be work towards a decision in regards to public policy. So that's the reason that we're looking at these Big Red Board Chats would be an opportunity for 3 board members to sit down and have a two-way conversation with those in that desire to attend. This is what we used prior to COVID. Again, we did these at local establishments. They weren't well attended, and that's why with renewed interest, we think our last one that we had one in May. It was relatively well attended. We had it at Simon's. We did have some pretty decent attendance. Mr. Farrell, myself, and Jan, we had a Big Red Board Chat where we did have some, I felt, was a decent two-way conversation with those that attended. We were able to answer questions directly and have that conversation. So just the thoughts in regards to the structure of these meetings. And it is one of the things that the Communications Committee is looking at, formalizing it, how best we communicate this and get it out for the public. So questions or concerns regarding the schedule? What do you folks think?
Andrew, I had one suggestion. Since all of these are in the evening, and a lot of times that might be a childcare issue for single parents or some of our families who have a spouse who works in the evening, then maybe, just to be more accommodating to people who are available during the day, to maybe change the times on one of them.
That makes sense.
I hate to say that because I'm normally not available during the day, but it just kind of stood out to me that these are all evenings and, just to be accommodating to different work schedules, and we know that childcare is can be an issue for people.
Yeah, we could definitely, I guess we would have to figure out which board members were available during the day, or, if they could take time off of work themselves to do that. That makes sense to me. Does that?
And in the past, we have done that, so it makes sense to continue that.
Yeah.
So maybe one of these that were at the, I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, we can.
Is it possible, Mr. Sislo, to consider a Saturday?
It's definitely possible. I mean,
Just to throw it out there, and/or one of our student committees student organizations at the school I work at, the NHS, kids offer to do free daycare or childcare to children if it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's really the availability of us to be able to do it, which, I mean.
Well, I mean, I think it's important too. I didn't really think of it till Kirsten said that, but to also make it available for our students to attend, right? Because we want them to be, open and willing to come to any of the Big Red Board Chats. So maybe, a lot of our kids are on tight schedules. They're very busy. So maybe
move
weekend day would be helpful as well.
Make one during the day and make one during the weekend. Then we've got 4 different opportunities. Any preference on where that those might land. Maybe the first one, we go ahead and stick to the schedule, and then the last three, we figure out where we can land those. We can talk to the communications committee and work from there. So, does that make sense?
And thank you for putting this together, Mr. Zislo. I think this really helps get on the ball with the communications committee and give it out there to the community.
Thank you to you as well. You're on the communications committee.
We try.
All right, so that's Big Red Board Chats. We'll adjust that schedule, take a look at it. We'll bring something back to the next meeting. Again, in regards to our strategic plan around maintaining, improving facilities and equipment to support safe and innovative programs, I do need a motion to approve a land easement agreement as presented in attachment F.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Macchio.
It's been moved and supported to approve a land easement agreement as presented in attachment F. Mr. Gearbaugh.
So conversation started back when a developer purchased the property just north of Simons Elementary School, and we really started looking at how can we support development in the community, because as many of you who have been here for a long time know, big developers are not coming to Milan right now to build large subdivisions because it's more profitable to do so in other communities. Not because they can't make money in Milan and developing large pieces of property, but they can make more money in other communities where housing prices are higher. So we do have a local land developer that purchased that property just north of Simons Elementary School and is interested in putting in a subdivision. He's been in front of the city and the planning commissions and has all of those approvals. He and I started talking about that development because obviously it's got the bus garage as their backyard neighbor and Simons as their southern neighbor, and so wanted to work with that individual and have conversations. And some of the conversations that came up was the plan as approved actually doesn't include sidewalks along Platte Road. It has the students actually coming out of the subdivision, crossing over Platte Road, then coming down to Simons and crossing back over Platte Road, which does not make sense to me because we already have a crossing guard at one location at Platte Road, and those positions are not easy to fill. So we started looking at what are the opportunities of putting a sidewalk on our side of the street. The developer was open to that and is even open to, at first, at cost to the district, also continuing that sidewalk from our property line to the current sidewalk at Simons Elementary School. So just kind of as these conversations happened, and we talked about how many pine trees need to be along the back property line to make sure that we have a good divide between the bus garage, because our buses do start up at 5:30 in the morning. And just some other things. We started talking about, and he approached me with the option of putting one, enhancing the drainage ditch that goes all along the bus drive route, and then also looking at putting in a retention pond that would partly be on if you go to the easement sketch plan, you can see that piece of property. It's kind of where the bus garage loop takes that turn. And I do want to reiterate, we have a drainage ditch all along the bus garage drive, and there actually is a very small dry retention pond already in that location. I have requested that if this easement goes through and the developer has agreed, that this would be a dry retention pond, so it will not be like the two retention ponds in front of the high school. It will actually be at a low enough level that it will stay dry. And if you go back to the retention pond at the other end of that ditch by the bus garage sometime, that's a dry retention pond, and you can see that 90% of the year we can mow it and keep it clean. And so we began those discussions, and I got our legal firm involved because I didn't know exactly what it took for a school district to create an easement or if it was even legal. And part of that is there has to be some fair trade involved, and that we're not just giving something to a person. And that then looped in those discussions of sidewalk and some additional trees and some improvements. This easement also includes that in order to gain this easement, the LLC will have to maintain that retention pond, keep it mowed. If it needs to be dredged, dredge it. If it needs repairs, repair it. And so I feel that this is a very safe agreement for the district to enter into. It's working with a local developer, and we would love to have more rooftops in Milan area schools. And really that piece of property already has a smaller dry retention pond on it, and really ultimately we have no use for that property, and allowing an easement there is not detrimental to the district in any way. And I can answer questions if anybody has any.
Just to clarify, Brian, because I have easements on multiple parcels of my property, and then in the process of negotiating another one. This easement would, when or if the company were to be sold, this easement would go with that.
Yes, the easement is transferred to the heirs, successors, and assigns of both the district and Madison Estates. So if Madison Estates decided to sell their property, that easement would be transferred. So let's say they get the development built and they're maintaining it, and it will be an association type situation. So Madison Heights is the association. So basically there's other lawn in that area that the association would be covering the mowing of. So this would not be like they have to come out and just mow that piece. That does transfer. And then the other piece that's important is looking at the termination. This easement agreement will terminate upon agreement of the parties. That's one option. Upon Madison's estate abandonment of the easement area. So if they say they don't want it or they don't need to use it anymore, or upon Madison Estate's failure to perform the obligation set forth in this agreement. So if they don't keep it mowed, or they don't keep it up, or they don't do those things they're required to do, then we can end this agreement and require them to develop the required retention space on their own property.
Brian, is there a start date as to when all this is going to?
A start date for the building of the homes and things?
Well, and then the requirement of the, the easement.
I think there's a desire by the developer to start working on this, hopefully this summer. Obviously, the roads and things would be the first. I mean, we all know how subdivisions develop out. I have not seen the exact plans for the whole subdivision. I just haven't looked at them, but I've talked with a developer. It sounds like it's going to be somewhat similar to O'Brien Street, in that it'll kind of, for those that know O'Brien, it'll kind of have an entrance and then some type of oval. I believe it includes single-family dwellings and possibly some condos on one side, kind of very similar again to O'Brien Street.
I just didn't know if it would interfere with like the bus and everything, especially.
No, the work that they would be doing will not, they have to stay a certain distance away from our bus drive, and they really can't interfere with us. That's part of this agreement, is they don't have the ability to interfere with us.
I appreciate it. I just wanted further clarification.
Nope, very valid questions, folks.
Wasn't going to be an issue. Okay, thank you.
The other piece is the agreement also allows us, we currently use that drainage ditch and the retention ponds at either end, and so the improvements will also help us in that if we ever had drainage issues, we have the right to drain to that as well.
Thank you.
Good questions. Any other questions or comments? It's been moved and supported to approve the land easement agreement as presented in attachment F. Ms. Heika.
Kiger?
Yes.
Macchio?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Freight?
Yes.
Heika? Yes. Motion carries 6-0.
All right, back to communications. Reminder, this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business It is not to be considered a public meeting. There are 2 times for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. When addressing the board, you will be asked to state your name. The board determines the amount of time granted to individuals or groups to speak. Each person shall be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. I will give you a 30-second warning, and I ask you to finish your thought when the alarm goes off. Board members may question speakers but are not obligated to answer questions or make statements or commitments in response to issues raised by the public. In general, such items will be referred to the superintendent for advisement, investigation, study, and/or recommendation, or designated as future agenda items for board consideration. Is there anyone that would like to address the board?
Janet McFalligan. I wanted to thank Jamie for reading earlier and revealing, some texts that are in the high school library. And I just wanted to make parents and grandparents and any concerned people that truly care about what their kids are exposed to and what and maybe would not want them to be exposed to materials that would be promoting sexual activity. So I went to the website, and here's what it says. You need to go to the website go.boarddocs.com, and then go to the right top. You click on the right top is policies in the top right corner. A menu comes up, and then you click on 9,000 relations, then go to 9130 public complaints, and then scroll down till you get to matters regarding instructional materials. So here is a list of the books that Jamie just read so they can know. One title is Push by Sapphire. Another title is Identical by Ellen Hopkins. Another title, All Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson. And Lucky by Alice Sebold. And I just want to say, I'm not speaking here as a Republican or a Democrat, but just a concerned parent. And 100% of the people I know will be concerned. And they will be happy to know that they can go to make a complaint. And like I said, there's just, when I was in that class, when they were having that book read, there was just more crude sexuality language happening from the students like I'd never heard before. It focused on women being treated like objects. Come on, kids and teens are impressionable, so let's expose them to learning, math and science and English and all of that, and not sexual exploration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, Alicia Powell. I was not going to speak tonight, but I have to say that I'm shocked, as I think many of you were, just watching your faces as some of this content was read. I'm a parent of a high school student. I have younger children. I have lots of family members, extended family in the district. And, sorry, I just ran back here real quick. But each year we get this, the list of all the books that they'll be reading in English class just to approve, because some of them can be a little controversial, of Mice and Men, things like that. School is where I send my kid to get, to have their education and to productively learn about things. And so I sign those sheets knowing that they're having a conversation. So when there's tough parts in those books, they're having conversations with a professional who is there to teach them that it exists, that this happened, but that it's not okay. I support education in a wide variety. I don't want my kid to leave it out of high school ignorant to things that do happen in the world. That being said, I am in no way okay with any of the stuff that she was reading. And I have a high school student. And I'm 40 years old, and I was appalled and embarrassed and felt like just disgusted. I cannot imagine what a 14-year-old freshman would be thinking. I don't want to imagine, actually. And there was a parent that mentioned that unfortunately it is a reality for some students. And I agree it is, and it's disturbing and it's terrible. But I can't imagine they want to relive it either in school, which is a safe place for them. That's, you know, they absolutely should be able to go get some help with that, but they don't need to relive that in that spot. That's not appropriate, let alone through the whispers in the hallway that are happening from kids who maybe are not sensitive, that maybe that actually happened to somebody. And I think it's reckless to even be allowing something so off the charts, even for them to have access to just unlimited access to that. And I think it's making it okay, which I think all of us can agree that and the topics that she was mentioning, reading right from the book, are not okay. And I can't imagine Democrat, Republican, Independent, I don't care what you are, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a community member, it's not okay. And so where do we get a list? Because I now feel like I would like to know what's available to my kid. And so that I can follow this policy and I can go and say, you know what, I'm not okay with this. And I don't agree with just taking everything off of the shelf. I do think there's gonna be some hard topics, but there has to be a limit. And this is just way beyond the limit. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Powell.
Hello. My name is Amy Landingham, in case you've forgotten me already. So I have just a couple of things. On the books, I haven't read any of those books, but I did write them all down so that I can read them, because I think judging a book by one excerpt is probably premature. I can't say that I think that we should have the book on the shelf because I haven't read it. But my one thought that hasn't been brought up yet is incest and rape are horrible and they're egregious. And if you handle them with gentle language and clean them up and sanitize them, you are no longer representing what really happens there. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, yes, the language kind of makes me want to vomit, but when we're talking about rape and incest, we should want to vomit. So I think we need to make sure that our kids are getting authentic literature to the topic at hand, in addition to considering the fact that the language is vulgar and disturbing. Different topic. I think that you, the board, have spent an inordinate amount of time in the last year discussing the minutes, and I would suggest that you consider, make the minutes what you want them to be, keep them there, and stop continuing to have these discussions, because it is getting to the point that it is just a waste of time. And I think that there are many, many more things that you should be focused on besides continuously having debates about minutes. And my last suggestion is that you consider bringing back the recommendation or the requirement that when someone has public comments, that they give their address. I think it's really important for the board to understand who your stakeholders are. So for example, I'm a good example, right? I live in the district, I don't have a child in the buildings, and I think that my opinions maybe should be weighted just a little bit less than people who do have children in the buildings and your decisions are affecting them directly every day. So I'd like you to consider re-implementing the requirement that people give their address so that you can get some read on if they're one of your stakeholders, if they're not one of your stakeholders, and what their standing is in the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, first I want to say it was kind of ironic while I was sitting here. I just got banned from Facebook, from my group, for posting graphics from the books that I'm discussing tonight. I was banned for adult nudity and sexual activity, literally as I was sitting there. Oral sex pictures of a man on a woman, oral sex pictures of a woman on a woman with a strap-on dildo. Those are graphics of the books that I'm asking you guys to pay attention to. These books I read tonight were the ones I could stomach reading. There are worse in Milan schools. Ones that I couldn't even bring myself to read out loud, if you can imagine, after hearing what I read. So some of the things parents that are fighting to keep these books in the schools say to me most is it's not porn, but then they hear me read it and they go, oh, well, they can get worse on their phones. Well, unfortunately, that is true. But they can also go get drugs or alcohol on anywhere, anytime they wanted. Does that mean that in a school, we should sit up a table and serve it to them on a silver platter? No. Then they turn to, well, we can't ban books. Nobody is asking books to be banned. There are legit restrictions on movies, DVDs, music. Why would there not be restrictions on books? There's more important things to worry about, people say. Well, I want to know who brings these books in the first place. I don't expect any of you, any of these parents, I didn't know this until recently. I don't expect anybody to know what's in every one of those books. But there needs to be a better process of finding out who got them in the first place and an easier way to deal with getting them out if they are inappropriate. So then people say, well, there's different types of kids that need to see themselves in these books. I agree 100%. But the problem with that statement is the majority of the books are heterosexual sex. It's not remove all the homosexual books or remove different cultures than ours. That's not it at all. The majority of the books that I couldn't stomach reading tonight are heterosexual sex. And then people say, well, some of these things happen in real life. We can't exclude those people from society or feeling like they're in a book. 100% to understand where she was coming from. But I talked to many people who've been abused, and they said the last thing they would want to do would read these books as an abused teen and know that their fellow students are sitting there reading them along with them. So I think this comes down to the left knows that this is wrong, even based off of their standards, but they refuse to side with or agree with those on the other side. We need to come together and protect the innocence of these children's minds. Why does it have to be a fight? Why can't we agree that this is not okay and this is not book banning? There doesn't need to be a fight. And the law actually states that you are not allowed to disseminate, exhibit, or display sexually explicit matter to minors. There is an exception to the law allowing teachers and schools to do this if it is to a student as part of a school program permitted by law. So I will be looking into how these books in your library are part of a school program permitted by law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again, Rachel Hobbs. Thank you for putting the big red chats on the board. I think they're way overdue, but I appreciate the effort. I also want to make comment that the board has a concern with comments online, but yet they're not concerned about the comments that are coming here publicly. In fact, there was a speaker earlier that publicly humiliated one of our community members by drawing spotlight to him rather than addressing the board. And that's not acceptable. How are you going to address that? I would like to see that a newsletter come out of the high school. I see that all the other schools have newsletters, but there's no newsletter that's coming out of the high school. As far as the minutes go, we just need to make sure that they are an accurate recording that encompasses everything. My issue with the minutes had to do with a link in the superintendent comments, which gives no information. But in order for you to get that information, you have to go to another source. So I was perfectly fine with you attaching the scoop with the soup to the minutes. That would have sufficed. But, you know, I do believe that you made the wrong vote today. And I do believe that you violated the OMA because it's not a complete record that is available to everybody once you place it in that book. I had some exchanges with the board and Brian about diversity goals and where they could be found. Nobody could seem to point me to those diversity goals. However, I was told that there is a DEI team, as well as many other teams. I think that in complete transparency to the community, as well as gaining trust within the community, those committees, subcommittees, teams, whatever you want to call them, should be made available to the public so that parents know what's going on in the schools, and so that if they have questions, concerns, or even want to participate,
30 seconds.
they know how to reach out to those specific teams. I've asked this for a long time. I don't think it's too much to ask. I think it would benefit all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hobbs.
Ashley St. Clair. I don't think I realized the meeting was going to go this late. I should have probably done this thing in the first comments. I'm here for Milan Parks and Rec. We're doing our summer concert and movie in the park series. So tomorrow night is Third Thursday in downtown, if anybody's interested. There's not a concert at Wilson Park, but we are hosting a Touch the Truck from 5 to 7, where kids will be able to come and get inside of fire trucks and the police cars and ambulances, and there's like a lot of really cool vehicles for the kids to be able to climb all over and see all the lights. And then there is the movie in the park, so you can bring your chairs. We have a concession stand available for everybody. And so the movie tomorrow night is the Mitchells versus the Machines. Next Thursday, July 28th, the concert is the Jackson French Quarter Dixieland Band. And then after the concert is the movie Luca. August 4th, we have the concert is the Ones and Twos Band, which is like a Motown dance band. And then the movie is Clifford the Big Red Dog. August 11th, we have the Celine Fiddler's Philharmonic, and then the movie will be Sing 2. And then for the last movie in the park, it's August 18th. There's not going to be a concert, and it's going to be a kids' drive-in movie. So we've actually had like really big boxes that are being donated so that the kids can come early, decorate their boxes how they want to have their cars so that they can actually sit inside of their cars to watch the movie Cars. So every single one of those nights, we do have the Parks and Rec concession stand down at the park, and we have popcorn and hot dogs and pretzels, and it's super fun. It's a big blow-up TV screen. You can bring blankets, you can bring chairs, bring bug spray. But other than that, I hope to see you guys all there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sinclair. Are there others? All right, next up is Superintendent comments. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Thank you. A few things to share this evening. Again, the district wants to remind our students and families that the program providing free breakfasts and lunches to all students ended on June 10th. Later this summer, the district will be reminding families to apply for free and reduced meals for the 22-23 school year. We don't want to see any of our families that qualify miss out on this important support. And part of what will be included in that communication is the annual and monthly income allowances to qualify for either free or reduced meals. And I will just give one line out of the chart that will be included. For a household of 4 people, in order to qualify for free milk and free lunch, the household income is $36,075 for a total household income for 4 people. For reduced price, it's $51,338. So again, the reason I would put this chart into that communication is so that families don't think, well, I don't qualify, and they don't dig into the application far enough to see what those qualifications are. So the complete chart will be in my scoop from the soup, and it will also be in the communication that goes home to parents regarding applying for free and reduced lunch. The district also wants to remind all community members that we offer a free preschool program to eligible families. Eligibility for the Great Start Readiness Program, or GSRP, requires that families' incomes be below 250% of the federal poverty guideline. These are not our requirements, these are the state of Michigan requirements, as GSRP is funded through the state of Michigan. If you have any specific questions about this program or our early childhood education, or you are interested in registering your child for either our tuition-based preschool or our free preschool, please contact Miss Lisa Mellinger, and her email address is the same as everyone else's in the district, mellingerl@milanereaschools.org, or you can call her at 439-5159. Again, Milan Area Schools offers both the state-funded free preschool and a tuition-based preschool program. The Milan High School program in the Federal Corrections Institute, or FCI, held their graduation ceremony on Tuesday. 8 inmates received their high school diplomas. It was a great honor to be able to hand those gentlemen their diplomas, as they've worked hard to earn them. It's important to note that the Milan FCI is the only Federal Corrections Institute in the United States that offers a high school diploma and not just a GED opportunity. The Federal Bureau of Prisons, as was stated by the warden at graduation, has visited the Milan FCI and is currently investigating how to replicate our program across the country in other federal correction institutes. The FCI Milan program is fully funded by grants and does not in any way affect the general operating budget of Milan area schools. Under some community news, I'm sad to share that Gerald Cook, a Milan area schools graduate and lifelong Milan resident, passed away on July 8th. I don't normally announce when our graduates pass away, but I think Jerry held a special place in the hearts of a lot of people in the district. He supported Milan athletics and was inducted into the Milan High School Athletic Hall of Fame in 2002. More recently, the girls volleyball team actually created an award called the Jerry Cook Award that is issued each year to a player for their outstanding performance. I've known Jerry for almost my entire career here in Milan, and I truly would venture to say that Jerry is in the top 5, if not the #1 slot on the list of Milan area school athletic events attended during a lifetime by a community member. For those of you that know Jerry, he attended just an inordinate amount of Milan athletic events. The teams respected him, the teams appreciated him being there, to the point where they would invite him to their banquets at the end of their season because he was such a dedicated fan. So, and he was a lifelong Milan resident. So we ask that you keep his family in your thoughts. On board, just want to remind everyone that the state filing deadline to run for the Milan Area Schools Board of Education is 4 p.m. on July 26th. Candidates must file the required paperwork at the Washtenaw County Clerk's office. That paperwork is not turned in here to the district, so I don't want anybody to be running tight on that deadline and come here thinking that they can turn the paperwork in the district. It has to go to the Washtenaw County Clerk's office. I also want to announce, even though Mrs. Rosenleacher is not here tonight, in accordance with the timelines provided in Michigan state law, Mrs. Rosenleacher did sign the acceptance of office and officially took the oath of office. Those were notarized and those have been shared with the county clerk's office. The responses to the K-12 Insight School Quality Survey for parents, campus-based staff, and students are being finalized by K-12 Insights. Once the district receives the final report, we will share that information with our administrative team. We will then share it with the Board of Education and then share it with the community at large by placing it on the district website. We expect this to happen sometime in mid-August, and most definitely it will occur before the beginning of the 22-23 school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerba. Mr. McMahon.
Yeah, I have a few updates. Just want to let you know that we completed the Section 31A program report and the Section 41 program report, which are due typically by July 1, but they extended it to July 15th this year. Krista Hendricks is a big piece of that because it's a budget and a program report that I take care of. So those are done. That's nice. We are currently working on the Title I selection schools report, the consolidated application, and the Title III consortium application. Those are usually due July 1, but during the pandemic, things got pushed back. We didn't actually get approved on our Khan app until like February last year. So the new due dates are now like September 15th, but we'll get them done ahead of time. But that's one of our focuses right now, is getting those reports moving. And then I just want to share lastly that tomorrow the administrative team is gathering for a day-long PD on the instructional framework called Making Thinking Visible. And we're looking forward to a day of learning in the summer with our administrative team. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Board member comments.
Mr. Sislo.
Yeah, Mr. Farrell.
So just a few things. I also want to welcome Betty Rosenleacher to our board. I think she's going to be a very good addition. I know she couldn't be here tonight, but I think she's going to be a real good addition to our board and bring perspectives to our board that we may not have had previously. The district will be undergoing the financial audit sometime in August, September, so Krista Hendricks and the team in the district office will be busy preparing for the audit. I did want to mention that the state of Michigan did increase the foundation allowance per pupil by $450. You may recall that we had budgeted $400 per pupil. So I anticipate that there will be a budget amendment coming to the board in November, December. We'll have a better idea as to what our student count is. Right now at 1,900 students times $50 per pupil additional revenue, the revenue adjustment would be $95,000. The only other item that I had was, I know there's a MASB conference in October, and unfortunately because of some work commitments, I'm not going to be able to attend. Also, I just wanted to thank Karen Hunt from the Communications Committee.
Lambert, I'm sorry. That's my fault.
It's
Karen Lambert.
Karen Lambert.
Oh,
Yeah.
Karen Lambert. Thank you for coming and giving your report, and the survey that you had provided the board was I thought was very good, and it allowed us to provide input to the committee. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Others?
I just have a couple of items. As we approve the new Social Security, my mind is at the wrong job right now, approve the social studies curriculum, I would like us to set a schedule so we can get regular updates on the rollout. I know that takes time to really see how it works, but I'd like to keep that in our minds so that we have a schedule on that rollout. And with that, I know I've asked for this in the past, so I'm going to keep asking. I'd like a rollout of the ELA curriculum that we implemented pre-COVID, because I recall during that conversation, we discussed timelines and how long it would take for us to know that it has, one, been fully rolled out, and two, the impact it may be having on our students. And so I'd like an update on that. I'd also like to thank our communications committee and Karen Lambert for coming and giving us an update. I hope that everyone saw from at least the board survey, at least from my own perspective, how long we've been grappling with this situation and communications and how to improve them. And so I am happy that the committee is there to assist us because it's a difficult decision. It's a difficult task to try and figure out how, as a board, we increase our communications. I also want to send my sympathies to the Cook family. I interacted with Mr. Cook a lot at swim meets. I don't think he missed a local girls' swim meet. He was always at the pool, as I'm always at the pool, so I saw him a lot, and I would send my condolences to his family. I'd also like to just kind of level set a little bit on the number of times that the issue of school safety has been discussed at a board meeting. So these are just kind of a gathering of times that I think mostly Mr. Gearbaugh has updated the board on school safety issues and things that he and his administration are doing to address school safety. During the February 23rd, 22 meeting, he announced that there had been a biennial review of our emergency operations plan, and we had conducted that review in conjunction with our Milan Police Department. So we had reviewed our policies and our plan on how we would react to school safety issues. During the March 9th, 22 meeting, Mr. Gearbaugh announced that on February 24th, Mrs. Freight, Mrs. Landingham, Mr. Sislo, and Mr. Gearbaugh had attended a Washtenaw Association of School Boards professional development on student threat assessments. And this development provided an approach to violence prevention that emphasized early attention to problems such as bullying, teasing, and other forms of student conflict before they escalate into violent behaviors. Basically a way of how to address issues before they become even more serious and result in a school safety issue. On May 11th of 2022, I believe Mr. Gearbaugh announced this, but if not, the district's professional development was held on Friday, May 6th. Sorry, Mr. Gearbaugh did announce during that meeting that on May 6th, the district's professional development was held, and it went well, and it included ALICE training for everyone in the district. Again, a way that we train our staff and our administration on how to handle a threat. During the May 24th, 22 meeting, Mr. Gearbaugh announced that on May 13th, the Washtenaw County Superintendents and Police Chiefs held a joint meeting throughout the county to discuss community violence intervention, student threat assessments, and school safety and ALICE training. On June 22nd of 22, Mr. Gearbaugh announced that on Thursday, June 16th, all MAS administrators, social workers, and counselors attended an all-day comprehensive school threat assessment guideline training. And the training was offered by the WISD using a trainer from School Threat Assessment. The training puts a formal process in place for evaluating threats from various sources, and it closely matches the informal work that had already been done at MAS. So this is just a smattering in the last few months of the number of times that we have been updated as a board as to how we are addressing school safety in the district. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heika. Are there others?
It was my pleasure to attend the FCI graduation yesterday. I was able to get there early enough to spend some extensive time with one of the families with young children that had traveled from out of state to come see their dad graduate, and they were so excited, and it just makes you understand how important this program is. I'm very, very happy to see that once again the federal prison system is looking at replicating this program. I know they had talked about that pre-COVID, so it's pretty exciting. I believe they were having a college graduation ceremony yesterday afternoon. So it's just wonderful things that are having ripple effects. So I was very fortunate that it was my pleasure to attend there. So thank you.
Just in regards to the bills and reimbursement, folks are welcome to email Mr. Gearbaugh to request that, and he will provide that as appropriate. I appreciate Jan and Brian attending the graduation at FCI. I'm sorry I was not able to attend. Today, the MASB put a presentation out on the state budget. So as Tom said, I attended that, and it was very good information, and obviously we'll get a lot of information back from that in regards to the budget amendment that we'll see in winter. So other than that, I don't have anything else. Anybody else have any other comments? Ms. Freight?
Thank you, Mr. Sislo.
Yeah.
I too wanted to thank Karen and Alicia for being here tonight representing the Communications Committee. I know Andrew and I have been, and Amy as well, in many of those meetings that now we're getting better at timelines, but I appreciate all the time and the effort that you two ladies, as well as the rest of the community, or the committee, have put in. I would also like to thank the community and the board for their thoughts concerning the passing of my mother-in-law. It was kind of you all to extend that. I appreciate it. That's all.
Thank you. Any others? All right, meeting is adjourned at 9:42.